Hello and welcome to Have a Chat. It's a beautiful Monday here in Miramichi. Of course, we're at the Rogers Studio live. And joining me today is my dear friend and mayor of City of Miramichi, Adam Lorden.
Yes, good afternoon, Judy. I am not Veronique Arsenault, but I am glad to be here with you today, filling in as your guest co-host.
I love having you as my guest host. Veronique will be back next week. She's away on business, but we always have lots to talk about. And I have asked you today to start us off on this beautiful day with the quote that you've decided.
I do feel, and as you mentioned, it's a beautiful day in Miramichi, as most days here are. Yes. But I feel very honored because I know that the quote is usually your bit to do. So to get to do the quote is, wow. And I thought I would, as I was doing that, and given also what is happening today, of course, over in London, in the UK, and what we've been living through over the last couple of weeks, today's quote is actually from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II herself.
Perfect.
And I feel it feels appropriate for the moment, as it does just generally in life. The quote is, which some maybe have heard before, her quote is, "Grief is the price we pay for love." And when we think about that, isn't it really just quite beautiful?
Isn't that so to the point, too?
Yes.
I think I was saying I attended a funeral as I spoke to this last week. I attended the funeral of my dear aunt, my dad's eldest sister. And I said to the family at that time, the more you love, the harder you love, and the longest you have somebody with you, and the longer and longer that they're in your life, the harder it is to say goodbye, because each day brings something new, more of a connection, So, I have laughed as much in life as I've cried. Right, and that's what we go through, the ups and downs and the sorrows, and it is a very sorrowful day for many and most people around the world, as the longest reigning monarch ever has been laid to rest.
Well, it's to think about the quote, and then we'll chat a little bit about Her Majesty as well. But it really this is life, and I think so many of us, to maybe have this perspective, we know that we will have difficult times. We know that we will suffer loss, and condolences to you and your family on the recent loss, Judy. And as you know, and I've suffered loss in my family and my life as well. And I think most of us have. That's part of being human. But to think that if we can connect some of that sadness to just really the happiness that comes from having love in our lives and having connections in our lives with people, whether that's family or close friends, and we know people are dealing with loss all the time, and including in our community, and it seems like there's been a lot of loss lately and to acknowledge, but over time, hopefully we understand that certainly we're glad that we've had these people in our lives. It doesn't necessarily make the grief easy in those early moments and days. But for example, with someone like the Queen, I think we could acknowledge that at 96, you've had, and 70 years on the throne, you've had a heck of a good run. And so I think that's why when I've seen some of the coverage around the last week and a half, it's been somewhat celebratory, as it should be. So certainly there's a mourning, and she's the only queen that many of us have ever known our whole lives.
Exactly right.
But there's also a tone of a lot of celebration to think about the life that she's lived and dedicating herself in that way to service.
Oh, my heavens.
Yeah.
She was patron of 600 charities and organizations during her lifetime. That woman, to me, was just a rock. And, she was very much a human being, aside from all of her, being Her Majesty for 70 years. For example, Angela Kelly, her dresser, must have a very, very sad heart today, because she spent so much time making sure the Queen always looked very special and stood out. And the Queen once said, "I will never wear beige because nobody would know who I was." Well, they probably would know who she was. But Angela Kelly, one little quick thing I took note of is that Queen Elizabeth, in her heart, I know, had to be under scrutiny her entire life as Her Majesty. And yet, there were times that she wanted to be human, Adam, like you and I. So Angela Kelly took a picture of her, the only photographed picture ever of Queen Elizabeth II in a white dress. And she said, the Queen said, I have an urge to put my hands in my pocket and strike a pose. Because you know what? For her, that would be so infrequent, if ever, captured on camera, that it's the cutest picture ever. She's standing there and she's just like one of those models for the moment, but that just shows that she wanted to live a little bit like the rest of us and have fun and casual moments like that.
Well, I think when I think about sort of looking back, and I think that has shone through, and even though unquestionably dedicated to service, in an incredible way and taking her role very seriously, but there were moments where you could see that she had a sense of humor, and I think that's what we like to look at in sort of people in those positions, is to feel their humanity.
Yes.
And I heard a story last week after she passed about there were American tourists traveling around Balmoral a few years ago, where she, of course, loved to spend so much time. And the American tourists approached the Queen and her bodyguard and didn't know who the Queen was, and ended up asking the Queen to take a photo of them with the bodyguard, which she gleefully enjoyed doing, and got a good chuckle with the bodyguard afterwards.
I remember that. And speaking of that, one of the guards has stood as she was laid at rest for 19 hours. He stood guard. Said it was the greatest privilege of his entire life to have been a protector of her. And he said he wanted to do a final goodbye. And so many hearts are weighing so heavy. And I think I know he's not well liked in general, and that's okay. I don't air any dislike for people. I try not to in general, but especially people that have done so much in this world as King Charles III has now done over his 5 decades of being, in the royal picture too. As Prince, they're harsh on him, but I think of all of the monarchy, all of the relatives, and all of those who loved the Queen, he was right at the top. Yeah. He's mourning hugely. And when they sang God Save the King at her funeral this morning, he was so full of emotion that I became full of emotion, because not only is he losing the most cherished person in his life, everything now is going to fall on him, right? And the expectations that people are having of him. And he knows, that he's not the most popular choice, that it's like no one can replace my mother kind of thing, but he has to.
Well, he will. And, I think in time, and there's been a lot of discussion, and that'll continue, to think about the place of the monarchy in the world, what that means in a modern era, the value that it might bring to some other Commonwealth countries. Some may be interested in maybe stepping away from that. And that we have to acknowledge that not the Queen, but the Crown certainly has had a role in some darker parts of our history as a country and as a world, with colonization, for example. But I certainly can relate to the new King's loss of a mother, and so at the end of the day, again, they have this whole context around them, but they're also human beings, and no matter the age, to lose a sibling, a parent, or and as from a son to lose a mother, I know what that feels like firsthand.
You sure do, Adam.
And so to deal with that on top of everything else, I wish him well, and
me too.
We'll see how it goes. But it feels like he is getting a bit of a new beginning from the public, which is good. You're right.
And I did bring our own Miramichi leader, which has on the cover from Thursday, September 15th, Miramichi's They Mourn Death of a Nation's Grandmother. And pictured on the top is Queen Elizabeth passing in front of Ben's lunchroom, which was a staple of Miramichi. And
2 icons in this photo.
2 pieces of history right there. Huge parts during her visit to Miramichi in 1976.
Wow.
Now, I know my husband was an observer. He was standing in the background somewhere. He didn't get to, get close enough up to the Queen, unfortunately, but I know some people that did, and we're so blessed. But just for a moment, may I just take a little bit of this newspaper clipping when Charles III delivered his first speech as king, because it really, really speaks to me, just a few of the pieces from it. On his first full day of duties, King Charles III has delivered an inaugural address. He is now head of the Commonwealth, an association of 56 independent countries and 2.4 billion people. And for 14 of these countries, including Canada, the King now is, of course, head of state. He said, I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration example to me and to all my family, and we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family can owe to their mother for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example. And just one more little area. The King's speech recalled an address Elizabeth made in 1947 on her 21st birthday in a broadcast from Cape Town, South Africa to the Commonwealth, pledging to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life, Charles said. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, as you said, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. And so that was summed up, just what I really took from it that reached my heart from his first speech.
Yeah, well, and so I guess there'll be a new beginning and a lot of changes for so many of us, and certainly it feels like over the last few days and today, though, we've done a good, proper send-off for Her Majesty and all that she's done as well.
And 2,000 people were packed into Westminster Abbey this morning, and predominantly in black, of course, and even little Princess Charlotte, who's 7 years old now and third in line for the throne, wore all black. Little girl, and she had a pendant on in the shape of a horseshoe, which spoke to the Queen's affection for horses and dogs. So God bless, God rest the Queen, and God save the King.
There you go.
So we have touched and given our blessings to all the family and fans and love of the Queen around the world. Let's talk about your fantastic weekend. You never stop. You're the busiest man I know, besides my husband.
Fair point. Yes, well, Judy, I did have a very exciting weekend. I was down in Halifax for the Finn Atlantic International Film Festival. As people I hope know by now, of course, in addition to being mayor, my professional career, my personal career is in television and film and media as a producer and director. So my company, Neenan Productions, which I co-own here locally with Michelle Cadogan, we produced a film last year about the efforts of New Brunswick's Wolastoq Indigenous community to reclaim the original Indigenous name of the St. John Wolastoq River. And so we were down in Halifax. Our film was selected to screen in the festival along with our young director, Nate Gaffney, and some other members of the crew and some other friends and from the New Brunswick film community. So we got to see our film up on the big screen in a big theater in Halifax, and boy, was that exciting.
Cheers to you and Michelle, your company, your success, and all of these people that are just making things happen.
Absolutely. Well, and this feels very timely and exciting too, because it's an important social discussion that we need to be having in New Brunswick, and so to also be a part of helping to get this message out and to supporting those folks, and we're hoping still that there'll be a screening sometime later this fall here in Fredericton, probably. The documentary has aired. The name of the film is My Name is Wolastoq, and it's aired on CBC earlier this summer as well, and it is still available for people if they want to go check it out on CBC Gem. Sorry, I feel like Sean's probably over there thinking, don't be talking about another network, but sorry, Sean.
That's cute. But, he knows I'm very devoted to this station. And this
yes, we love Rogers, too.
Yes, we certainly do. And before we go to break, can I just say thank you again for the opportunity that you gave me of being in your self-written, along with James Mullinger, production of End Brexit. It was one of the highlights of my career. At my age, it's something I never thought I'd see myself doing. I want to thank you again. It was absolutely wonderful, exciting, hairy, nerve-wracking, and amazing all in one.
All of the above, right? One of the most intense weeks of my life, but also one of the most fulfilling. And I think it was for a lot of us. But I got to thank you, Judy, for agreeing to be in our cast. For people who don't know, this show, which is End Brexit is the name, is based sort of on a fake version of James as a British comedian moving home to New Brunswick and landing in Riversville, which is sort of our fake version of Miramichi. You play my mother, Doris. Yes. I play Danny. Yes. You were hilarious. You brought so much charm and energy and fun and humor to the role. And I can't wait for people to see this. This show will come out next spring. Yes. And we'll be hoping to have a big premiere here in Miramichi, and it'll air nationally as well on another network, Bell. Again, we love Rogers. Judy, that was the project of a lifetime. It was. And boy, didn't we have a buzz. And it was also so exciting to film here in Miramichi, to do what I love right here at home. And the town, I think really came together. People
did.
were supporting us. So many people got to come and play extra roles or help us with props or locations. And so
Just felt special.
it was so special, and I can't wait. We actually start today all of the editing, which we'll be doing from now till the new year. And I can't wait to share this with everyone. When
You
we get
have
through
to
that.
promise me that you're going to let me see it first. So I can say, no, that cannot be public. That cannot go. And some of the bloopers will be really good too, I'm sure.
Oh, the bloopers will be absolutely fantastic.
What a great time that was.
Oh, I mean, we had something so special. And, in New Brunswick, I'm excited about this moment because there's been a very healthy film and television sector on the Francophone side.
Yes.
And on the Anglophone side, we haven't seen as much of that. But recently, and to their credit, the New Brunswick government has doubled the film tax credit in the province.
Right.
And so we've started to see a bit more, including this. So to have a scripted comedy, a sitcom filmed right here in New Brunswick in English, for the first time in as long as anyone can remember. Hopefully it's also the beginning of more and more happening in the New Brunswick film community in Miramichi, of course, and across the province.
Good. I'm just excited for it all. And I'm very, very excited and proud of you too. You just keep going and going and bringing and keep on doing it.
Well, we have to,
Yes, culture is so important.
when we remind that ourselves that life is but a moment,
Life is but a
so
moment.
Michelle and I were talking about this in the car on the drive home yesterday from Halifax. Is life's too short, and we never know how long we're going to get.
Nope.
So if there's something that you want to be doing, today's the day.
That's what I say. Seize the day and enjoy and grab every opportunity. And thank you again for that opportunity, because I absolutely loved it. And I was looking at a script last night. I was going through cleaning up old things that were bringing me fond memories. And that's the second time I've played Doris. I played Doris in The Owl and the Pussycat before with Stéphane Savoy, so I must be meant to be a Doris.
Well, it's funny. I remember seeing that play when I was home from Toronto. And so maybe that was in my subconscious.
Maybe.
Because I know you know that your character, Doris, in our show, who is also the Rotary Queen in Riversville, really when we were writing that, I was inspired by you and knowing you my whole life. And so it was a lot of fun to dream up the part based on you. And then when I asked you if you would do it, I was fingers crossed, because if you had said no, I was going to be devastated.
Devastated.
I don't know who. There was no one else who could do it.
You're a doll. I love you. So right now, everyone, don't go far. Grab a coffee or a cold drink, and Mayor Adam Lord and I will be back very shortly with our first guest. Don't go far. Hello, and if you're just joining us, I'm your host for today's show on Have a Chat, Judy Loge. I'm thrilled to have Mayor Adam Lorden with me as my friend and co-host, and what can I say, former movie star partner now.
And a castmate.
We won't go to the movie part yet, yes. Castmate in a production we did this summer. So welcome back. We are so happy to have you join us today. And we are joined by Angelia Morrison, who is a friend of mine and a friend of many and well known in our area. She's grown up here, but first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, Angelia.
Well, I'm 42 years old. I'm born and raised in Miramichi. My parents are Michael and Janice Morrison. I have two older brothers, Robbie and Sean. I've been a federal public servant now for about 15 years. So I've served our community with front-end services. I'm really happy to be here today and talk about something that's very important.
Which I can say right off the top is very important to Adam and myself and all of our viewers, because it's something we're all affected by in life, and that is mental health.
That's
and
right.
You're a mental health advocate, and you're also an author.
Yes.
So, Adam, you just want to jump right in
well,
there.
Angelina, yes, it's so great to meet you, get to know you.
Yes.
Here with a few other friends too. But it's funny, I didn't realize your family connection. I've of course done a lot of work with your brother Sean.
Yes.
And as you mentioned that, and I'm sitting here looking at you, I can then see the resemblance and even hear the resemblance of it in your voice. So. It's great to get to chat with you today, though, about mental health, which is an incredibly important topic. I understand that you were involved in writing a chapter for this new book about mental health, Dream Big and Be Bold. Can tell us about that? Like, how did you get involved in writing for the book?
Well, I actually met a lady by the name of Paula Simpson Morand many, many years ago. too many to count. And she's a motivational speaker and life coach. She's also co-founder of Dream Big, Be Bold Media out of Ontario. And I met her several years ago as a business owner at the time in our community. And I had the privilege of going to an event that she helped organize. And it was like a women's day, a women's kind of retreat. And I attended that with my mother, and she spoke that day and shared her personal story, which is very touching. If anyone has the opportunity to watch it on YouTube or anything like that, I really encourage them to do so. But she had a huge impact on me at that time. And we kept in touch. And a few years later, with my career, I was asked to be or to assist in organizing a wellness session for employees. I've always been on social committee or wellness committees through my work and promoting mental health and wellness in the workplace. So I was asked to help organize this event with a manager. And one of my hopes was to have Paula come speak to the employees, because it was a stressful time in the workplace. A workforce adjustment was going on, things like that. So I wanted to support them the best way I could, and I knew that she had a really important message to share. So I reached out to her, never imagining that she would come to Miramichi to do this event, and she agreed. And I introduced her that day, and in doing so, I talked a little bit about wellness. Didn't really talk about my personal story or experience at the time, but I guess I had an impact on her. And we kept in touch and have been very, very good friends for many years. And she always told me we were going to work together someday.
Nice.
And I was young at the time, so I just kind of brushed it off, I guess, as, you know, oh yes, you know, like you've spoken to Fortune 500 companies, you've been all over the world. Like, I just never considered that I would ever get an opportunity to work with someone like her. And she reached out to me about the end of April, beginning of May, that she was working on her next publication, an anthology, a collection of stories. And she asked me to be a part of it. And I was truly humbled and touched that she reached out to me in that way. And I consulted with my family and a couple really good friends and decided that I was going to write as part of this story. So the book is called Life Out Loud, and it's a collection of stories, women all across the country, entrepreneurs, photographers, public servants, healthcare professionals, and the goal is to inspire and motivate and uplift other people by sharing personal stories.
And we all have personal stories. I mean, whether someone's journey is more difficult than the others through life, we all have somewhere in our life that's an obstacle to overcome, right?
That's right.
And so I'm so proud of you for bringing this book. I can't wait for it to come out. It's going to be launched a little bit later, maybe next month. And so there'll be more to come on the book. But just touching on yourself and myself and Adam and everybody else that's watching, everyone has been going through some change since the pandemic, COVID-19 hit over 2.5 years ago. And we have seen, I believe, a 25% increase in the rate of people struggling with mental health in the first year alone. Yes. So you have to allude to the fact that, let's face it, the healthcare workers have been just under fire and pressure and extreme stress dealing with this from day one, right? And then you have the isolation, people not used to being at home and maybe already struggling with mental health and anxiety and depression, and young people that are so used to being with their peers, like kids. That's what as a child, that's what I look forward to, is being with my buddies, whether it would be in school or after school, and drama and dance and figure skating, and all of that had to come to a halt. And the elderly, not being able to have, and what really struck me about the pandemic, one of the most hard things to deal with, was when I had friends or loved ones pass away and you couldn't bereave with them in person. You had to watch it stream online or send condolences through a text or phone call, and they needed to be embraced and held and told that, I'm here to comfort you, but you couldn't do it. And just in the hospital, when people were really ill and you couldn't go there, it was only one member of the family at a time, and it's been really hard. What do you think of it all? Like, it's just been for you too. It's been as mayor and a public figure, like in film and everything else.
Well, I certainly feel happy that it looks and feels like we're through the worst of it. But when you think back to, as you said, Judy, those early days and the stress on everybody, both in the healthcare sector. I think when we talk about frontline workers now, we also learned that what that also meant was people that work in grocery stores
or
sure. servers in restaurants, and which I think has been maybe a positive change is that we've learned to appreciate some of these roles in our society and in our communities that maybe we undervalued before.
No, so I did. I always did.
No, not you.
No, but I meant to say not just healthcare workers, which is true because they're getting all the ill people coming in to deal with by the thousands, right, all over the world. But yes, I always said they're underestimated, undervalued, those little guys and girls, men and women in the grocery stores, for example. I'd always say, thank you so much for serving.
And I mean, to your point, I think we've been now for a decade or more, because even when I was working back in Toronto, still at the Maryland Dentist Show, was the beginning of the Let's Talk Day. And I think we've come a long way even before the pandemic in being more comfortable being open about mental health as something that's real, something that we all suffer for, even particularly men, who would often hide these things in. And the pandemic, certainly there was more of it, but it also opened up more doors, I think, for people to talk about it. But certainly, Angelina, I'd love to sort of get your thoughts on that. And I think we are making progress. There's always more to make in terms of making people feel comfortable to share those stories and that they're struggling, but that it also then for some folks in government means that we have to have more resources in place too. But I'd love to get your thoughts as someone who works in this area.
Basically, for myself, I've struggled silently for many, many years with a mental health condition. When I was asked to be a part of this special project with Paula, I really had to dig deep, and I prayed really hard on it to share my own personal story, which is not an easy thing to do. No. There has been a lot of work done, I feel, and a lot of progress in the field of mental health, but there's still that stigma that exists where there's almost a shame or embarrassment around it, and it shouldn't be that way today. I look at mental health conditions as no different, and I don't take anything away from people that suffer from other illnesses, but no different than someone that suffers from cancer, which my family's been touched personally with that, a heart condition, anything like that. I don't look at it any different, and I think that we need to be able to talk openly about these things and support one another a lot more than we often do in that. And so sharing my story was not to seek attention or sympathy in any way. It was just to inspire people like me that maybe suffer from the same condition that I do, to let them know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are resources available to you, and you can turn things around. There is a recovery phase for that. There may never be a cure for mental health conditions, but there is hope.
For sure. And as far as real talk goes, have you seen much in our area? I know how busy you are, and you're always working, on strategies to improve the attention put on mental health and resources. But have you seen either one of you sessions in our city, or at the schools or somewhere? Because I've seen them here and there, but big venues where people come together and have real talk. In the audience, kids standing up in grade 10 saying, I've been struggling. And I know it's hard, like you said, to get up there and be that one person in grade 10 saying, I'm a young guy, I'm on the hockey team, or I'm a young girl and I'm the head of the student council. But guess what? I struggle with mental health. We need I'm saying that they shouldn't stand out as people that have more serious conditions than others. But some of those kids and some of those, just for example, NHL hockey players that have gone away to recover from, for their mental health, proud of them writing books and talking about it and getting, rehabilitation and going for resources and therapy and all of that. Bravo to those people.
Well, I think it's all about seeing someone who you can see yourself in. So the more that people share their stories, the more someone else out there can see that and say, I can relate to that. That sounds like me. If they are talking about that, then I have someone to relate to. I have someone to connect to. Like, it's not just me. And I think our youth, to answer your question, Judy, are really great at this. And like so many things, the youth always lead the way, and they get there first, right?
Amazing.
As we need to make these changes as communities and as societies. And so I know that there's been so many great things done in the schools in recent years that have been led by the youth.
Yes.
Building these peer-to-peer support programs, starting conversations, making videos or movies sometimes to create that awareness. So there seems to be more and more, but I think that's what's great about you sharing your story too, Angelina, is that I can share a story and someone out there might relate to that, but other people might say, well, that's not really similar to my experience. But the more people that are out there sharing, from hockey players to federal civil servants, someone is going to connect with all of these things, and then maybe they are going to share, and it's going to just continue to grow into where it needs to be, right?
That's right.
I just think the more that we do try to organize something like that, I wouldn't be against trying to do that myself. Now that we're more able to socialize and go out and about, and the restrictions have lifted like considerably, I would love to have some kind of a gathering of anyone that would like to come, and have as many as a dozen speakers get up and talk from different walks, from youth to people like in your position with the federal government, to people that are in retail and dealing with the stresses every day of trying to keep their business going, and that's just an example, but I think it can happen. I don't see why not. All you need is a willing group of participants and a little bit of encouragement, and then, like you said, once it starts, the domino effect will take place.
Well, and I mean, you're in a way, Judy, we're doing that right now because, of course, this is a TV show that airs across the province, and so people are able to hear and learn from Angelina. And I wonder, Angelina, like how did you find that your life and work changed during the pandemic? Was that sort of a stressor for you, or did it help you get to a point where you were more comfortable sharing your story? Or
the pandemic definitely has been difficult for me. The isolation part is not good for anybody that has or struggles with a mental health condition. So we moved to a working from home environment, and I really missed the social aspect of things. And eventually, when restrictions kind of were a little less, and that I found myself needing social connection with people. So I actually took a casual job at a local clothing store to get out amongst the public.
Nice.
And just get socializing and things like that again. But I had a lot of friends come to me that were in perfect health their entire lives, say to me, that once they knew that I struggled a little bit, and I started opening up probably around my mid-30s really about my condition to people very close to me, and some of my colleagues at work and things like that. Yeah. So they would reach out to me during the pandemic and say, I don't feel well. Something's not right, or, I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm feeling really isolated or really depressed and that. So I noticed an increase in my own social network of things like that happening. With coming out with writing my story and telling a little bit about my own personal struggle, I hope that it makes a difference to other people. I hope that they can relate and that they take something from the message.
Oh, and I just say it's that weight lifted off you when you disclose anything personal about your life, whether it's abuse you've had growing up, whether it's, like you said, a struggle with your mental health that you've been keeping, what's going on with me? Why do I feel this way? To anything in your life that's been like a secret that once that's unloaded and someone says, oh, I can relate to that, or I'm glad you told me because now I can tell you my side.
That's right.
It's such, I'm trying to think of examples of myself, but, like I've had a bad back for years and that, but it's not something that can be pinpointed, so they can't fix what they can't find. So I can't go out and talk about pain as such, you should, whatever. Like, it's my personal thing. But once I told someone that I had this crazy wonky back, it was like, me too. And then you start thinking, okay, I'm not the only one that's trying to go to the gym and struggling and thinking, every day is an issue. But yeah, you've got to be real. We all have something to deal with. But I'm just really proud that you're here. And Adam and I are the perfect people to talk to because we're very open, and our viewers are surely watching and thinking they're going to learn something from this whole TV show today that they can think about and maybe look at other members of their family, friends, or neighbors and say, maybe I'll just reach out to that person, you know, and make a difference. And so what I'm going to say to our viewers is, don't go away, please. Angelia Morrison is one of those people like myself and Adam that has so much to share on the topic of mental health, and just in the fact that we're such social beings, we're such social creatures, that we have all gone through a change in mental health regardless, because after 2.5 years of being like out every night and engaged in something most every other night as yourself, all of a sudden it was changed, done, now what do I do? And we had to make other, you know, changes to our direction in life and kind of adjust. So I'm going to say to our viewers, don't go far. We're really interested in having you come back right away. Thank you.
To be continued.
Hello, if you're just joining us, I'm your host for Have a Chat for today's show. So pleased that you can be with us on this beautiful Monday, and you'll be seeing us all week long at different times. If you Google the Rogers schedule, just Google that and Have a Chat Rogers Times. And I am joined by the lovely, handsome, look at how you're dressed today, just giving me a real lift on this day, Adam Lorden, our mayor and my co-host for the show.
Thank you, Judy. I brought you a dozen red roses.
I love it, I love it, I love it. Thank you so much. No water required. We just planted them here. And so if you've not been with us for the first 2 parts of our show, we are joined by Angelia Morrison, who's been having a great candid conversation with us on an all-important topic, which is that of mental health, which everybody in the world experiences. People have their ups and lows, and good mental health, everything's fine, and then something can happen and they're in a struggle. And of course, there are different medical health and mental health conditions for sure. So we're talking a lot about it, but we want to hear specifically more about your story, Angelina, and what were some of the signs and symptoms that you were going through that led you to believe that there was something just not quite right?
I guess a lot of it has been hindsight for me. Like looking back on my life now, I see the signs and symptoms. I was, as a child, I was bullied, and I had a lot of anxiety looking back as a child. My parents did a wonderful job of getting me involved in sports and dance and music and voice, and kept me very active to bring me out of my shell and kind of get me past the things that were happening in school. And my mental health condition didn't actually hit me until I was about 27, 28. And it was instant. It was, you know, it happened quite quickly for me. And leading up to that, I had been working as a correctional officer for a year prior to my career that I have now. And I was in a very high stress environment. Obviously, they do a very good job and a very difficult job. And so I worked there, and I noticed when I look back, I noticed things like I was very emotional. I found myself crying a lot, really down, lethargic, not the energy, not the perspective that I always had on life, that love of life. And I became very obsessive compulsive about my personal environment, like my own home, to the point that it was very stressful. And ultimately, one evening, my thoughts were racing as well, which I don't mind talking about. And one evening, my thoughts were racing so much so that it was just out of control for me, and I knew something was really wrong. So I reached out to my parents, and I did go to our local hospital. And I was hospitalized for a period of time then. And I received wonderful care. I can't say enough about the care that I have received in our community. They did many, many tests to rule out anything physically causing what was going on. And obviously those came back that wasn't the case. So they had to look at, was it a mental health condition for me? which it was. And I don't claim to be an expert on mental health. I'm not a medical professional. I don't promote one treatment over the other. I know what's worked for me, and what works for me doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for somebody else. But I have a treatment plan that I work with professionals, and it's been successful. I've had my ups and downs. I've had side effects and symptoms like anybody else that struggles with mental health. But ultimately, I didn't learn my diagnosis until I was about 30 years of age. I didn't accept my diagnosis till I was about 35. So, and I really, really accepted it when I wrote this story.
Good.
It was a very cathartic experience for me. So, my symptoms that I experienced, looking back on my life now, I can see things that happen, but it really happened really abruptly for me. And it does for some people, and it usually does. Mental health conditions usually do affect people later on in life, for women usually at 27, 28.
Yeah, so. I can attest to that from friends I have that exactly around that age they surfaced.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, as you're talking, Angelia, and when as we continue to have these discussions, and that thankfully we're having more of, hopefully people get that understanding that it doesn't look only one way. Like it all looks so different for so many different people, right? Like, so some people may have signs earlier in their life. Some people may not have any signs or notice anything until decades into their life. And for some people, when we talk about, mental health issues, mental illnesses that might be ongoing, as you mentioned, but some people may just have an incident here or there. You know, it might not be something that they have to live with their whole life, and so they might say, "Oh, well, it's just this one day I'm feeling like this," and so they might not think that it's as valid as somebody who's been. And so I think one of those important messages for all of us to get out there is that it looks different for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so then also then the treatments will, or dealing with it. Not even to say treatment, because for some people that might not be what is needed. But just that nobody's suffering is less valid than somebody else's.
Good
if
point.
you're dealing with an issue. Then go talk to an expert. And as we talk about things, what I think has also been helpful is as a society, so in Miramichi and around New Brunswick and everywhere, 20 years ago, if you brought up a mental health issue, people might say, "Oh, just tough it up, that's not real." Well, we know it's real, and we know that people suffer, and we know that it's normal, and we know that there is help out there.
That's right.
And so as you mentioned, and I'm glad to hear that writing your experience was cathartic for you, and you alluded to that. Tell us a bit more. Like, what was it like for you to have that cathartic experience? What did you learn, or did you become sort of more confident in accepting what it is that you have to deal with?
I guess through writing my chapter, I realized all the things that happened throughout my life led me to where I am today. Like, with my condition, I'm considered highly functioning. That doesn't mean somebody else that has the same condition is in the same, category as me. I am highly functioning. I maintain a household. I maintain 2 jobs right now, one full-time, one casually. I have a social network of friends. I'm close with my family, all of those things. But basically, in writing that, I looked at my life, that coping mechanisms that I was learning throughout life are what's really helped me today. The things that I've learned from sports and dance and activity and being in pageants and all those things that my parents had me involved in growing up really taught me the coping mechanisms that I needed later in life, and to kind of accept and deal with my condition.
The root of it, though, coming back to it, I'm a strong advocate and anti-bully activist, like big time. So would you say, like you said, a lot of factors led up to, and a whole conglomeration of factors led up to where you're at today? And it's, like I said, for so many people, it's the same journey. But do you think that the bullying stayed with you? Like, was that something that stayed with you until things came to surface in your late 20s and 30s? Was that one of the most rooted parts of your being, your struggle with mental health?
I think it definitely impacted my life throughout my life. I don't know, I would never say that caused my condition or anything like that, but it definitely contributed to it, because I can remember as a child feeling like in a fight or flight mode, you know?
Yes, of course.
At all times. So, you know, it definitely had an impact on me, but
I want kids to hear that. I want parents to know that too.
Yes.
How you know, serious bullying can be, and some of the effects that it can have later in life, or from the onset right to current day.
And not just in kids either. Like,
No.
I mean, you mentioned a moment ago,
No.
Angelia, like, you know, like part of your hesitation originally to share your story a while ago was, you know, you thought people would just say that you were seeking attention, or you know, and so I think like we all, even as adults, have to be cognizant that if we're going to do what we need to do to help support people with mental health issues, is to accept that this is a real thing and that it looks different in different people, and so, you know, to not to sort of fall into those bad small-minded bullying habits of, oh, well, she's just this, or no, it's not just anything, it's all valid. And you know, oftentimes maybe those folks need to have a look at themselves, like what is it in your life that is not maybe where it should be, that, you know, if your focus is on talking negatively about other people and their health experiences.
And you know, so many people suffer silently. They struggle, and this, like I said to you and Adam, is such an unload, right? When you write that chapter in the book, to get it right there on paper, tell the world, tell our viewers, because people at their home sitting there can relate to as we speak. But what do you say to those people that are struggling silently?
That's a hard question. For people that are struggling silently, I want them to know that you're not defined by your condition. That's really important message for me to get across, is I'm not defined by my disability.
No.
I may have some limitations, but I'm still very capable of doing great things with my life.
Absolutely.
And they are too. But somebody that's struggling silently, I just want to say to them, practice self-care. That's so important.
Self-care.
You know, we tend to think that that's selfish.
Yes.
To practice self-care, and by self-care, I don't mean doing great big things that cost a lot of money. You know, like taking trips or
spas and yoga. Yoga's
like
great.
That.
Yoga's
I'm
great,
referring to something like as simple as taking a walk on a nice sunny day. Buying yourself that coffee and just sitting with yourself and being alone. Writing in a journal. You know, doing things like that for yourself. Having a hot bath. You know. Do the little things that are important to you and that you're passionate about, and reach out to people. Don't be scared to reach out when you feel like something is wrong or you feel you're unwell, because we have come a long way.
We have.
From many years
on
ago.
that note, you've had that support system where I have, and you've had too, like, you know, sisters and brother and parents and myself to a world of friends. So, you know, there's those people that are alone, though, that they're out there, they're isolated, they don't have money to even buy that coffee hardly. They don't have a support system of any kind. They've been maybe abandoned from their home life and discarded by loved ones. So that's another whole scenario right there, the people that we see wandering around worldwide that are homeless, that are struggling with mental health. And so what then?
And what I say to that is, we all have to have some level of personal responsibility. Compassion and kindness towards other people. Like, if you see a member of your community or a colleague struggling in any way, reach out to that person. You don't know what difference that's going to make to them. You can save a life at the end of the day.
Yes,
you know, like, it's a very difficult subject. It's something that some people don't want to feel like they're overstepping, but I really feel that it comes down to having kindness and compassion towards each other. And when we do that, we open the door for people to talk and reach out their hand for help.
Yes, absolutely. Any last thoughts or questions before we kind of head towards the end of our show?
No, I mean, it's been really great to chat with you today, Angelia, and get to know a little bit more about your story, and hopefully to sort of add to this conversation of that everything looks different for people, but I think you've given some good advice too to people, to when we talk about self-care, it doesn't have to be something big and elaborate and silly, like within our own lives. You know, certainly, like I think I'm an overthinker. I have anxiety at times, and being very busy, and sometimes it's just a matter of just going outside and checking my garden, or going for that little walk. And sometimes it means taking a break from people and things. Sometimes it means calling a friend or a coworker. So everything is we all deal with these things, but it will look different. And so hopefully, if we've helped people to understand that message today, and to know that support is out there, hopefully, and then that's part of my job in my mayor role, and others like me, is to continue to advocate for those additional resources. So as more people are more comfortable coming forward and acknowledging mental illness, people have always suffered, we just haven't known what it was called 70 years ago, right? And now we're making progress on being comfortable talking about it and creating that awareness. Now the next piece, is that we need to make sure that the support systems are in place to adequately help people, because that will look different for people as well. And some people, that's going to take a bit more intensive support than others, and we've got to make sure it's there.
Watchful. Yes. I remember one guy I may have discussed in the show at one point. He was looking just so forlorn and so lost downtown one day, and he was at the transit waiting for his bus to home. And I thought, it was a cold day, and I thought, I'm going to ask him if he would like a drive instead of taking the bus. And he knew me, but he had never disclosed that he suffered mental health issues. And then he just kind of said, Judy, I want to talk to you about something that's really been weighing on me. And I said, what is it? And I was kind of shocked, actually, because he kind of did some things I did, like downtown events, Tai Chi in the park, and I'd see him out and having his coffee and laughing, and I just thought everything was cool. But it wasn't cool. He was suffering with extreme depression, to the point that day where he told me in my car before I left him off at his house that he had suicidal thoughts. Unbelievable. Wow. And I said, you can call me. And I meant it. If you don't say what you mean what you say, then your words are just lip service. I said, you can call me any day, night or day, if you're struggling, and reach out to me. And you know what he said? I'm going to start crying, I think. He texted me that night and he said, you saved my life today. Yeah. Wow. There you go. You have to be watchful of people. Watchful if they're alone. Watch if they're not functioning. If you're at work and everyone's kind of like at the coffee break and they're chit-chatting and they're having their little gossip about the weekend's activities, and then you see that person that's kind of just not in the conversation. They're looking really, remote and not engaged, and just go over and say, is everything okay? And if it's not, you can talk to me. And just keep your eyes open for those kids in the schools and for those elderly people that are suffering home alone with their, they could be widows or widowers and children all moved away. We have to be so mindful. Mindfulness is such a huge part of embracing and helping our society along.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we got to make sure we give you a chance, Angelia, to tell us, so when's the book coming out and where can people find it?
The book will be on Amazon.
Okay.
And it's coming out October 5th.
Yep.
So I'm actually going to be hosting a launch here locally on the 14th of October. Yep. So more information will come out about that.
We have to go.
I'm hoping people will be there. I plan on doing a reading of my chapter and
we have to wrap up. We have to wrap up. So folks, we had to cut her off. We're going to bring her back. Have a great week. She'll be back for more follow-up. Angelia Morrison. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week ahead, and thanks, Adam Lord.
Well, we'll watch for the book. Thanks.